Hello, I'm Diana Skaya, and welcome to Face, our weekly summary of top events, but from a Central European perspective. My guest here today is TVP World Editor-in-Chief, Michał Broniatowski. Michał, so glad to have you here on another episode of Face to Face. So, Michał, the United States published its 2025 National Security Strategy. I believe you're holding it. You have it right there with you.
And this is it.
That's it, where President Trump's talking about his America First foreign policy and criticizing the EU and NATO, calling for an end to NATO's expansion, quote unquote, and unrealistic expectations that the EU might have of the war in Ukraine. Michał, what is your take on this?
Before we go to these details of obviously unfriendly toward the European Union.
What was your reaction? This is what
strategy.
I want to know. Initial reaction. You see this.
You know, I read it all so that you don't have...
So our viewers don't have to go through it point by point?
Friends don't have to read it. I read it all. It's a letter from the president and 29 pages of presentation of the president's strategy. We have to remember that this strategy is renewed every 4 years in the early months of every US president term. So we have Trump's second national strategy, security strategy, and it is not surprising. You know, you cannot expect from any US president, and especially from Trump, not saying that the interest of the United States is primary against all the interest of allies or especially enemies. Everything in the US activities internationally, globally, are subdued to the interest of the American workers, American military, and in general, American nation. In this case, from this point of view, it is probably nothing new, but the way he says that, or those who wrote it and he then signed, is quite amazing. He says, America is strong and respected again, and because of that, we are making peace all over the world. Interestingly, and
you care to agree or disagree to that?
Of course, America is very important to the world peace. Funny enough, he's stating something which is obvious, that America is strong and America is respected. You know, when he says that they are making peace all over the world, it's something different from what was before, because before Mr. Trump, America was making peace all over the world because it wanted peace globally. Now it seems that America is making peace all over the world because it serves its small interests.
Well, it is.
Business.
The days of the United States propping up the entire world order like Atlas are over.
Yes. Well, this comparison to Atlas is impressive. You know, we don't have any proof of President knowing the history of Europe and all the legends which are the fabric and foundation of the European culture. But well, let him say that they are no longer Atlas. Let's see who will America be.
Michał, is Trump signaling that he is distancing away from Europe with this strategy that he's pointing out? Because, I mean, going as far as writing that European leaders have unrealistic expectations for the Ukrainian war. I mean, if you ask me, I think it's Donald Trump that had unrealistic expectations of ending the war when he thought he would be able to end it in 24 hours.
We are now discussing his strategy, so don't expect me to say whether he is unrealistic or he knows that he is unrealistic. He has his own goals, and these goals do not mean that he wants to destroy Europe. On the contrary, he is saying that it is a great and beautiful continent, strong, being a big player, but he has this but, and he starts part of this strategy of claiming that continental Europe has been losing share of global GDP down from 25% in 1990 to 14% today. This may be a fact, but this is because, problem is that the United States are also losing the share. It's because of growing importance of China.
And he's blaming the EU.
Yes, but he's mentioning only EU, and while praising Europe and as an important partner of the US in the Western Hemisphere, he is inviting and supporting in several places in this strategy politicians in Europe and political parties in Europe who are against the European Union, who are even against NATO. He calls them in this document patriotic parties. This is a sort of a new speak from America to describe far-right parties, which are Eurosceptic, staunchly against immigration, and which are openly or less openly supporting goals of the Russian Empire. So, if doing so, he is on the one hand he wants Europe to be great again, and he's encouraging all those forces which are trying to dismantle Europe as we know it today.
So here, with all this, you just mentioned Russia. Michał, do you think this strategy is actually giving, or is going to give now, Putin and Russia place to maneuver itself around in Eastern Europe?
The main thing here, what I noted, is that Russia is mentioned here just as a participant of the war in Ukraine, with no condemnation. The enemy of, or in one place, Russia, together with China, is mentioned as a problem to the US. But there is a huge part of the document, in fact, largest part of the concrete targets is China. And Russia in this is almost entirely forgotten. He's not mentioning Russia. It's the main reason for instability of Europe today. Not to mention, of course, the bloody war in Ukraine, but because of this war and its obvious target being NATO, it is very strange that in this strategy, this threat to peace is not thoroughly discussed.
So again, in Russia's favor, Michał, how are European leaders reacting to this 29-page security strategy? How should they interpret this?
First of all, Mr. Trump calls European Union a body which is doing something which is called regulatory suffocation to the whole continent. And he's, as we said, encouraging politicians who are heavily against the European Union, the whole Union, in favor of their individual states. And then the document says, in particular, Trump administration finds itself at odds with European officials who hold unrealistic expectations for the war perched in unstable minority governments.
What does that mean?
What are the minority governments? A part of some governments in Holland which just collapsed. And
how can we understand that minority governments?
Yes, he believes that all the European nations are supporting, going on their own, supporting their patriotic parties, and this is just, Brussels, which is suffocating them, over-regulation, and that these European countries have to, quote, regain its civilizational self-confidence. Such a partner for Europe, like today's Mr. Trump, is a big threat because European Union is not is an organization which is put into doubt by many people. 2/3 of Europeans are still supporting the Union, but that means that the other 1/3 is against it. 1/3 is not a small number, and it's very maybe easy to change their minds. So, and they can feel now a full support from the President of the United States.
Michał, you mentioned Brussels there, so I want to shift gear now. A deadline for a decision on using frozen Russian assets is coming up very shortly, mid-month. Now we had Germany Chancellor Friedrich Merz, sudden trip to Brussels. Do you think that's actually shifting Belgium's position on being able to use those frozen Russian assets to support Ukraine? How do you see this evolving? And I mean, really in general, do you think EU leaders will actually secure Belgium approval by the December 18 deadline?
We will see what happens on December 18th. There are now two scenarios to support financially Ukrainian efforts to defend itself against Russian aggression. Bare fact is that in April next year, Ukraine will no longer be able not only to run the war, but also to pay the state to run. They will not have money for security services, for health service, for whatever. The state will go bankrupt in April if Europe doesn't help, because the US will not help.
That's not even half a year away.
No. Yes, and so decision has to be taken fast. The next unsurmissable deadline, there will be more deadlines, but now our deadline is December 18th, when in Brussels the European Council will meet the leaders of 27 countries, member states, and they will decide on one of two scenarios. One is probably immediately dismissed. This is a joint debt of 27 countries, because for this you need unanimity, and not only Hungary and Slovakia, which are skeptical on any actions to support Ukraine against the will of Russia. So there are more countries which are against it, and we need unanimity here. The only scenario which is possible at this moment, however, still looks very difficult to introduce, is to use the Russian assets immobilized on the account of Euroclear, the financial institution in Belgium, which has in custody 140 billion euros from the Central Bank of Russia. What European Commission is proposing is to connect this with 25 billion of Russian assets which are immobilized on private accounts. This makes 165 billion euros, which would help run the state of Ukraine and its military effort for the next 2 years at least. Probably even longer. The problem is that Belgium is constantly demanding proper guarantees from the European Union, and I must say that, partly they are right, because...
So they're not getting those guarantees?
They are right to demand these guarantees, because it may happen quite fast that Russians will be able to claim this money. For example, European Commission is not able to extend sanctions against Russia for another half a year period, and it will have to stop these sanctions. This would mean that it will also have to release the money from this account. Also, another threat which is seen by Belgians is that Americans may finally enforce some peace deal between Russia and Ukraine, which would include the return or freeing these immobilized assets, which would again mean that Belgium would become responsible to paying it back. So for this, Belgium needs absolutely impeccable guarantees from...
So do you think it's going to get it by December 18?
Mrs. von der Leyen, the president of the European Commission, come up with the typical for Brussels way of slightly twisting rules,
right?
and she wants to use the same article which was applied during the creation of the so-called COVID fund. This required, in theory, unanimity of all the countries, but they were trying to remove the requirement by using Article 122 of the European Treaty, which is envisaging a possibility for governments to adopt measures in the spirit of solidarity between member states because of economic emergencies. It doesn't say openly that this should be used in cases of war. Most probably it was...
They're playing with words here.
It was invented in order to support states in case of some major natural disasters. Europe expected more the general disasters, the natural big disasters, than a war, which now happens. So they may use it, and if they use it, they will not require the unanimity to take big financial decisions, which would mean immediately a possibility to, for example, extend sanctions renewal from 6 months period now for we propose 3 years period. And it would also allow to very quickly put in motion this usage of immobilized Russian assets, even before anybody would be able to react. But this would also mean creating this reparations loan, as it is called, not only the agreement of willing states, but also their parliaments. And it will take time.
Michał, but speaking of these frozen Russian assets, I mean, just to wrap up here, in a report by Bloomberg, reportedly the U.S. actually lobbied several countries, right, and several leaders in the EU to actually block EU plans to use those frozen Russian assets. I'm seeing you react to that. Tell me your take on this.
You know, Mr. Trump spotted this possibility that there is on the account in Brussels, there is well over $150 billion available for investments. And we saw the first signal of him spotting that in this plan, 28 points plan, which was announced
the reported peace proposal,
in November for peace. And it included a point in which the United States were proposing to spend this money on rebuilding of Ukraine after peace is agreed, and Americans will be able to profit from half of it. So, of course, they are lobbying with many countries, and the first country they are lobbying with is Belgium, which is now saying that agreeing for releasing these assets would delay peace process. So he's, you know, the Prime Minister of Belgium is repeating arguments of America, and is exerting pressure on Ukraine and not on the country which invaded it, on Russia. So he's now speaking in concert with the US and not with the European Union. I'm wondering what would he be speaking if Brussels was not several thousand kilometers from the front line, but several hundred kilometers, like Warsaw is, for example.
Thank you so much, Michał Broniatowski, Editor-in-Chief of TVP World, for all your insight here today. You know, Michał, just before I let you go, I do want to say, I mean, every week it seems, you know, we meet here and we're talking about this weekly new plan or new strategy that President Trump is releasing. We'll see what next week.
This strategy holds for the next 4 years, at least.
We hope so. And thank you for watching Face to Face. We'll see you here next week, and stay on with TVP World for more news and analysis.